Next is adding the texture into your sky. You're using chalk to draw your moon, swirls in the wind, and the stars. If you don't like the lines that you drew with chalk, simply take a paper towel, dip the end in water, and wipe away your chalk drawing. It dries pretty quickly so that you can redraw the line that you really want. On your paper palette, you're going to add some white, yellow, and the yellow-orange. Very small amounts of paint because you can always get more. And I'm going to use the smaller brush that's on the tray this time instead of the larger brush. Reference page is still there for you to look at for what type of texture you're trying to accomplish with your star, your moon, and the wind in the sky. So I'm going to start with some yellow. And as you can see, the yellow on top of the blue sky is kind of hard to see. So you might need to add a little bit of white to it so it's a little more opaque. And I'm using a little bit of orange, just the end of my paintbrush. I haven't even dipped the whole paintbrush into the paint, just kind of using the end of the paintbrush to do this. Adding a little bit of orange, and I'm just pressing down and pulling up on the brush. It's not one full long brush stroke, it's tiny little brush strokes. You want to see yellow next to orange next to white. So I have the moon done, but I want to make it look like the moon is glowing. So in a circular pattern around the moon, pressing down, pulling up with yellow, and then some white to make it look like the moon is glowing. Leaving some of the blue of the sky in between. There's my glowing moon. Going on to stars, I'm going to start with a little yellow dot, yellow and white, so you can see it in the middle, and then around just the edge of the paintbrush, just the way end of the paintbrush. Some lines, I'm just pressing down, pulling up pretty fast in a circular fashion, so they look like they're glowing. If you want to do your wind, you could kind of make sense to work at the top and then work your way down so that your hand isn't smudging this. So I probably should have done that star after my wind. I just have to make sure I balance my hand up above it so I don't smear it. So there's my last star. So for my wind, I'm actually going to need a little bit of blue paint. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue next to my white. Some white paint and start those short little brush strokes following that chalk line. And I don't want it to just be white, so I'm going to add a little bit of blue with it as well. The lighter blue I chose. If you want to do the darker blue, you're more than welcome to. Here's one swirl of the wind, pressing down, pulling up with that brush. It's not one long brush stroke, it's lots of short little brush strokes. Some blue in there. There's my other swirl of wind. If you get through your sky, you can move on to the tree. And remember, it's going to be, you can decide which side of the paper it's on. I'm going to do mine similar to the Starry Night, where the cypress tree is also on the left. So I now need to get some green, clean my brush really good in that bucket, wipe it on my paper towel to make sure it's clean. Good. I need some green and I need a little bit of brown. Green and some brown. Because the pine needles aren't just green, I don't want to use just green. I'm going to add a little shape with my chalk to say this is how big I want the tree to be. Now it's not a perfect cone. Instead, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to work from the bottom of the tree towards the top of the tree. So down here at the bottom, I'm going to press down with my brush, one whole row of pine needles, pine branches, picking up some brown, maybe even a little bit of that orange and yellow, That's already on my plate. Going to the next row. So we start at the bottom, so it looks like each row of branches is sitting on top of the one underneath it. Bring in other colors. Don't just use only green. Gives it a little bit of depth. A little bit of brown, maybe a little bit of yellow. Or green. I'm going to go all the way to the top of the tree. We're not going to add the snow on it today. We're going to let it dry, and then you can add some snow sitting on the branches next week after it's dry. So going all the way up, as high as I want that tree to be, and then I can go back in and add some more of my other color, but I'm just pushing down, pulling up with my brush. So I'm not taking my brush and flaring it out in a circle. I'm leaving all the bristles pointing up and then pressing down with my brush. So don't go straight down and ruin the bristles of the brush. It's kind of using the sides of the bristles. So sky, texture in the sky, your tree, if you get to it, 2 projects will go on a board onto the drying rack. Really clean out those brushes, get all the paint out so it doesn't dry and ruin the brush. Your newspaper, paper plate, paper towels will go in the garbage, and you'll get a new piece of newspaper for the next class.